This is just like interview for my like class principles of leadership. So like I have to like go and ask like leaders in their field like how they manage like people under them and like the challenges they face basically. So like my first question is like is about like establishing a constructive like work environment. So Ivy is like a very innovative company. It's like working in like very like edge of like technology and stuff. And in addition, it's like a remote company. So that's an additional challenge that you have to face, like while like managing people. And so my question is like, how have you like gone about creating like a constructive work environment at Ivy? And like, what things have you deliberately done to do that?
Sure, that's a great question. Certainly, it's been kind of a work in progress. Obviously, as we've gone through, we've tried different things out, and it still remains to be somewhat experimental. But I think we've managed to do a pretty decent job so far. I think the first thing to say is that it helps a lot that we require quite a lot of intrinsic motivation during the application phase. So in order for people to join the team, they need to have made a pull request, got that accepted into the repository, answers to video questions, have got a pretty good understanding of Ivy as a project. So people that join have already demonstrated self-motivation, intrinsic motivation, and interest in Ivy before day one even starts. So that's one thing that helps, that we have a team who don't need too much proactive encouragement because people are really excited about what we're doing. But in terms of the actual structural things, I think I kind of personally believe that a lot of what you get in a physical office can be to some extent replicated in a remote setup. You can't get it exactly the same, but I think some of the most important things are kind of constant awareness that everybody's there working with you. So we have everybody talking in the Discord throughout the day. We have a ton of different optional meetings throughout the day. We have open office hours every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We have discussion syncs every Tuesday and Thursday. We have combined syncs at the end of every day, which people can join. We have team-specific syncs throughout the week as well. We have one-on-one meetings with myself and supervisors. So kind of on any given day, you're surrounded by, messages from everybody on Discord. So you're very consistently reminded that you're working with your colleagues. There's lots of meetings, lots of face-to-face time. The discussion syncs we do basically are a kind of like a recreation of the impromptu chats you might have in a coffee room or something, whereby we randomize and everyone goes to breakout rooms and discusses. So I guess there's a few things to say there, but the main takeaway, particularly focusing on the remote side, is I think with some proactive policies and recurring structure in place, then you can still recreate some of those like random face-to-face interactions that really foster, team building and connections and so on.
Yeah, I mean, like one thing on like the people side of things, like I haven't been an intern. Like one thing I like really liked was that you really encourage like learning. Like you were encouraged to learn first and then go out and like build or whatever. And like people were very like open to being asked questions and whatever.
Yeah.
And the second thing was like the documentation. Like there's a document for everything, and they're very clear documentation of what's like. So you're very clarifying. You're clarifying like what's needed from you and what's expected.
Yeah.
So that's like a big help for new interns and whoever's new joining the company, have a clear like standard of what's expected, and everything is there for you to like work. Well,
I'm glad that was the experience that you had, definitely. And I think actually that is a great second point, which is that I personally, everyone has different approaches, but personally I don't think that too much top-down micromanagement is that motivating. I think people are much more motivated when they are given the time and space to learn, not put under too much immediate pressure. And I think we very much say, ask as many questions you want, no such thing as a stupid question. Every single person is encouraged to ask when they don't know and not be ashamed of not knowing something, because it's certainly not something to be ashamed of. We're all kind of learning on the roll, as everybody does all the time. And basically, exactly. And I also think, as you've alluded to, I think having a lot of choice on what you work on. We have this open Trello board where basically within some realm, within reason, like you choose what you want to work on. We have tasks assigned, but then people on the team self-allocate the open tasks. So you can kind of diversify your day proactively by choosing what interests you most. And of course, if one task never goes assigned to anybody, then at some point we need a proactive assignment of that. but generally speaking, people can choose the areas that interest them most. And I think that also helps with motivation.
Yep. I think that answers that question. So my next question is about like outgroups. So an outgroup could be like an individual in a group or organization that does not feel as part, like does not identify them as part of the larger group, basically.
Yeah.
So this could be like in Ivy's case, an intern or a volunteer developer that joins, but it doesn't really contribute, doesn't come to meetings, doesn't isn't doing the best, you feel that. So like, how would you like go about like addressing that situation, like where a person does not, like how would you go about like helping them, or either like fixing their problems if they're having a problem with stuff? So like what's the strategy there?
So I guess there's a few things. First of all, which is more broad, it's not just about kind of people in the community, it can be for people at all levels of seniority. We proactively ask everybody to give as much anonymous feedback about the role as possible. So both about my own managerial style, about what they do and don't like about their work at Ivy, and fortunately there's a lot of things that people do like, but also there are particular areas where people say, well, we could be better motivated and this could help and so on. And just really proactively addressing those is really important. When there's kind of particular people that might be struggling with motivation or might be kind of getting a bit further out the loop, one thing is that I do and encourage other leaders in the team to do is to just basically proactively reach out, not in some kind of like, I don't know what the word will be, not some kind of blaming or kind of way like, hey, you're not working hard enough, just really kind of say, hey, let's have a one-on-one catch up or something, like see what you're up to and everything. And just kind of, because at least in my mind, most of the time, if there's ever something like this, it's not so much that people are just being lazy or something. Sometimes people just feel a slight lull in motivation and don't feel quite as connected to the team, and then it's our job to proactively make sure that they do feel that connectedness and they do feel part of the group and they are motivated on a day-to-day basis, and giving people the benefit of the doubt that's the case to begin with, I think is a good approach, and just try to keep them to not feel as part of the out crowd as proactively as possible. Of course, in a way, it's not like everyone that joins Ivy has to be kind of completely in the middle of everything, and some people join on internships that they do 20 hours a week and they know on day one that they don't want to work at Ivy long term, or that they're going back to their studies or something. And then if they stay on the periphery a bit and then end up the internship finishes and then they don't join full time, that's also fine. It's not like everybody needs to be right in the heart of everything. So it's also kind of accommodating to different styles and different ways that people want to interact with Ivy, of course, and being open to all of them. I hope that was somewhat answered the question.
No, that's very good, very good. Like that's like the perfect answer. Yeah. So
not sure about that, but
but that's really good. So my next question is like, so as a leader, what do you know now that you wish you knew earlier when you like started like your like CEO role at Ivy, or when you started like managing people? Like what would you like wish you knew?
So maybe ask me in a year and I might have actually learned something more substantial, but I'm still learning very much. That's a good question. So what do I wish I knew back then? I guess, I think I've done an okay job at this, but maybe improving still. I think one thing, there's one thing I can say that answers that question a bit. Whether or not this has been a personal growth story or not so much is another thing. But I think one thing that certainly, when I go back to my leadership roles earlier, when I was managing projects and stuff before starting Ivy, I think one thing that's quite important is to kind of really just treat people as you would anybody else in a way. I think people resonate with, and I think it's also just important for building meaningful relationships to just not elevate yourself above anybody. Don't try not to like be too proud of a title or something. And everybody, everyone's just people, and really, treat people the same way you would treat anybody else, and be open to your own shortcomings and everything. I'm never worried about admitting that there's something I don't know that an intern knows way more about than me, and I'm the first person to ask them to educate me on it. And I think leaders should not try to pretend they know everything. They shouldn't try to pretend to be too strict and kind of demand too much, I don't know, seniority, respect or something. You should just really be one of the people on the team, be a team member like anybody else. be willing to learn yourself, because everybody's learning and everybody has their own strength to bring to the table. A lot of people on the team, of course, have expertise that far outstrip my own expertise, and being open to those and allowing yourself to grow as a team member as well is important. So I think just over the course of like longer term, and with Ivy that continues to be the case, I think kind of not feeling as though you need to be too much of a top-down authoritarian approach, and try to kind of foster trying to foster the most democratic, collaborative environment you can is good, because then everybody has a seat at the table, everybody's voice is heard, everybody feels they have more skin in the game because they are actively involved in all of the important company strategic decisions, and their opinions are not just kind of superficially valued, they're actually taken on board and treated and everything like this. So I think this is quite important, basically.
So like humility is a big like thing, like characteristic that you've worked on, like, you know, like that you think is like very important, like you wish you knew better, or like
I think so. I mean, again,
it's very
I think so. I mean, it's something I think I've improved in. I think maybe and also trusting people. I think this is one. Here's a better one. I'm kind of changing the answer a bit here. When I did some earlier projects, what I had a tendency to do was to kind of be a bit of a control freak, and kind of it wasn't done correctly unless I'd done it, which is, you know, stupid. But in early projects in my undergraduate and everything, I kind of felt like I had to sign off on everything. I had to be the person that finished everything, because, you know, maybe lack of trust and things, which are not good characteristics. So I think actually a more succinct answer to that question, I think you should make sure you get people whom you can trust, who can take ownership of different aspects, and then give them that ownership. Don't try to be in the loop on everything, because if you are, you're very quickly going to become the central bottleneck to everything in the company. So you just need to kind of let people fly with things, let them run with it, and you trust people on your team to make the right decisions, and not try to have your finger in every single pot is another really important one.
I think I kind of saw that, like when I first joined Ivy, like you were in every single meeting and you were just running from meeting to meeting, and like you had to be part, and then we had to change the structure, like where like there was a team lead, and then like you would join if you needed to be there, and you just like trusted the team leader, so that like that's like
exactly
how I saw that happen in front of me. So it's kind of like interesting.
No, that's a much better example, actually. Yeah, exactly. Because as you say, I was trying to run around doing everything like a crazy person too much, and then when we got these new team meetings and the team leads who then took full ownership, that was a much better transition. And totally agree.
So this is my last question, and it's like, so what sort of advice would you share to, like, personally, I think the question's for me, but like if I were to be going into a leadership role, like any leadership role, but it doesn't need to be Ivy, but like just any leadership role, but like what advice would you give to better help me like prepare for the role and just like better be ready for the challenges? I know you don't have that much
it's a tough one. It's obviously a very open-ended question. I guess much of the previous answer, so obviously give people ownership, I think, trust people, obvious things, treat people with respect and as your equals, as they are really. I don't know, as a general thing, I guess there's obvious things, like obviously you need to be able to think quite high level. I guess depending on what you're overseeing, you need to try to keep up with the big picture and not get lost in the details. It's kind of obviously related to the last question, but try to keep your eye on the ball of kind of what really matters, and all the other subcomponents. Obviously you can have a slightly zoomed out version of them, but really you're going to know what to prioritize, because when you're leading, obviously you really need to know what's important and what should be focused on first, and you can't try and do everything all at once and be in all of those conversations as well, because then you'll just get lost and stretch way too thin. So I guess a good ability to organize tasks into repeatable subcomponents, a good ability to prioritize what's actually important for whatever team you're leading, and obviously then there's the interpersonal skills, as I say, giving people ownership, trusting people, and not trying to play a role. You're just someone else who happens to be leading them and making these decisions, but you're not kind of superior or anything, and you certainly shouldn't feel that way, I don't think, in any kind of way. And I think people respect you much more if you don't, obviously. And these kind of things, I think. But I think it's something that obviously grows grows in time, and I think there's got to be a lot of learning on a job, and I guess maybe just a kind of acceptance that it's a learning process as well, and you're not going to start your first leadership role as a perfect leader, and you're going to learn and make mistakes, and you know the cliche, you learn most by making mistakes. So don't be too kind of yeah, these are some of the main thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah. All right, I think that's all the questions I have. So
awesome.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Of course.